public, and it should be going on to being streamed on YouTube
now. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I'm Steve Osborne. I'm chairman of the planning committee, and I'm a councillor, just like the rest of the people that you'll hear tonight. The meeting is being held in a virtual meeting facility, and it's been streamlined on YouTube, as I've said. I'm supported in the meeting by a senior officer. That senior officer is Tony Gillett. I should refer to him. I should refer to all officers with their first name. So in future, it's Tony. He's one of the district council's directors. He's got responsibility for planning. While I'm introducing people, we've got Marina, who is an important lady. She'll be taking the minutes to this meeting, and telling us when the 3 minutes are up. So she'll interrupt if you go on too long speakers and say 3 minutes, and then you will be stopping. We've got two planning officers here, both very senior in their own areas. We've got Eamon and we've got Catherine. They will be presenting planning applications. We've also got Jamie, who is our solicitor, who will be answering any legal or...
We sent out to everybody yesterday.
I beg your pardon? Who is talking? Whoever's talking, can you...
On now. The meeting's on now. I'll see if Tony can send it on to you. Okay. It's Catherine.
Sorry, Chairman. We've got a member trying to get in.
Yeah.
Just bear with us a second, please.
Yeah.
It was sent out to all councillors. Hello, she's still on there.
I would imagine that that's the councillors that need the information on how to get back in. Can we carry on now? Marina, is it okay to carry on?
Chairman, Tony's sorting out an issue with Councillor Lomax, so he said please carry on with the meeting.
Yeah, okay. Right, so I've introduced you to all the officers. You will hear Tony Gillett keep advising me on who wants to speak next. I can't do everything, so he will advise you. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we get to the agenda. We'll have a roll call in a minute to make sure who's here and who's not here, and to identify them, so you'll see who your councillor is. Speakers, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, because you'll hear noises like you can hear at the moment, which is the background of somebody speaking. Speakers have registered to speak. I'm afraid you have 3 minutes. After that, Marina, the clerk, will jump in and say 3 minutes, Chairman, and then I would ask you that you stop speaking, please. You're not going to clap, cheer, hiss or boo. And after each application, there will be a proposal either to accept officer's advice or not accept officer's advice. So you'll be voting for that proposal, not yes to that particular application or no to that particular application. It's yes to the proposal or no to the proposal. Right, now back to the agenda. First of all, the minutes. Is it your wish that we sign them as a true and correct record when possible, members? Just put your hand in front of you if you're happy with that. Right, you're all happy with that. That will happen then. Item 2, apologies for absence. Raina? There are none.
None advised, Chair.
Okay, well, I don't know any either. Members' interest, first of all, disclosable interests. Yes, Councillor Cribbin? You're muted.
Yep, just coming off. Yeah, just at Norton 2020 0170. Just to say that as housing and environmental health portfolio holder, there is a report going to strategy group next week, which relates to this particular application. I just wanted to note my interest as being the portfolio holder for this for housing. But I've taken advice, and I don't need to actually leave the room or anything like that. Just need as an interest.
Thank you. Party whipping arrangements.
None, Chairman.
Right. To members of the public, we don't get together as political groups or any other groups to decide how we're going to vote beforehand. Never have and never will. There's one thing I did miss out before. You've got to do the roll call that Marina, to show who is here and to show the public who is here. So over to you.
Councillor Chandler,
Yeah, that's me.
Councillor Cribbin,
Here.
Councillor Dabbs,
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Frost,
Evening.
Councillor Harris,
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Irving Swift,
Yes, Marina.
Councillor James,
Yes.
Councillor Longley is joining us later, I think. Councillor Matton,
Yes, here, thank you.
Councillor Parker,
Present.
Councillor Ritchie,
Here, thanks.
Councillor Robertson. No. Councillor Smith,
Present.
Councillor Wesley,
Present.
and Councillor Osborne.
I'm here. Yep. Right. The next item is to announce any applications withdrawn or under delegated powers. There was some new information that came on the Ravensthorpe application in the 12th hour. So it was decided that that information could be considered to defer it from tonight's meeting. So that will be heard possibly at next month's meeting. So we go to the first application on the agenda, which is the application at Norton. So over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just sharing my screen now with the PowerPoint for land at Goldens View in Norton. This is a hybrid planning application for the construction of 8 affordable homes, 2 market dwellings for a local need and associated infrastructure, which are full application, and 2 self-build dwellings, which are outline. So the site, as you can see by the red line, is to the south of the village of Norton. It's coming off an existing affordable housing scheme, which was granted back in 2005, sort of extending further on into the open countryside over here. As you can see, sort of it follows the line with the layout. These are here all semi-detached properties. This is a bungalow. And again, there's some bungalows here and a bungalow here. These are all subject to the full planning application and are either affordable housing or market housing. Then you've got a couple here which are for self-builds, which are outlined in an outline form. So the ground does slope, as you'll see by the photos. Again, this is how sort of the drainage is supposed to be happen. This is providing demonstration that cars can park and turn in the cul-de-sac area. The scheme has been amended to reduce the overall height of the semi-detached properties, and they now have a 30-degree pitch. So rather than 9 meters, they're about 7.6 meters. So scrolling through, these are the market dwellings or dormer bungalows. And this is the pair of rented social housing bungalows, which have been all agreed with our policies. This is a proposed scheme for the self-build. This is not set in stone. So this is views of the site from adjoining land. As you can see, the ground does slope away. And again, this is views from the churchyard, which you can see the site is up there on over there. And again, this is the views from Goldens View. And again, the properties within Goldens View and the current access to the existing field, which serves at the edge of Goldens View. This is the current play area, which will be linked to another proposed play area, which the parish council will take over. Now, the application is recommended for approval. The local highway authority do have concerns about it because the existing road into Goldens View is not adopted, but it's built to adoptable standards. But overall, it's considered it's acceptable, and therefore the application is recommended for approval, subject to the entering of the section 106 for the affordable housing, for the play area, and also the library contributions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have two speakers. First of all, Roy Hammond, who's speaking against the application. Over to you, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you, Chairman and councillors. I'm, as Councillor Osborne has just introduced, Roy Hammond. I speak on behalf of Lee Jakes. He owns a property a short distance away to the north of the site, and land which is outside of his domestic curtilage actually adjoins the northern site boundary. So Lee has asked me to convey to you the following points for your consideration. He firstly wants me to point out that he has no objection in principle to the new housing, and in fact is fully supportive of housing that meets an identified local need for Norton, but unfortunately not in the form that is currently proposed. So the concerns really lie in respect of the proposed development doesn't respect the form and character of the village, and the main reason for that is its depth extending away from the Broadway / Weedon Lane. The feeling is that the proposed development, by reason of that extension in depth, would cause serious harm to the form and particularly the linear character of the village, and that part of the village in particular. And as a result of that extension in depth, and I think it's evident from the site plan you can see on your screen now, it would result in an undue encroachment out into open countryside to the detriment of its intrinsic character. In reviewing the officer's report in the agenda, I am a little surprised at the absence of a landscape visual impact assessment to support the application, but particularly surprised at the absence of any comments at all from, or the evidence of any comments at all from the council's landscape planning officer. I would have thought, given the departure from the settlement pattern, that he would have been involved. There are, again, this is going back to the point that Lee has no objection in principle. There are practical and viable alternatives to the proposed siting and layout that would result in less harm. And I think including a reduced extension off the east side of Goldens View, not the depth that it is proposed at present, combined with a portion of development immediately adjacent the southern boundary of Goldens View, so more compact and better related to that existing little pocket that is Goldens View. Or potentially, actually, as a complete alternative on the western side of Weedon Lane / the Broadway itself. It's appreciated that that's probably in a different land ownership and there's issues of availability there, but it would better respect that form and pattern of the existing settlement.
Can you finish now, Mr. Hammond?
Just very, very quickly then. Lee, from a personal perspective, is concerned about erosion of the enjoyment of his land that is immediately adjoining, including the security of the boundary that is the common boundary between the two. Thank you for your time, councillors and chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Next speaker is Miss Golden, which is the same name as the View, Parish Council.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Mrs. Golden from the Parish Council. Thank you for this opportunity in difficult COVID times to express Norton Parish Council's party support of this proposal. It's for 12 homes on an exception site in Norton. It's designed to meet identified needs in the 2019 Housing Needs Survey, conducted in collaboration with the Daventry District Council. and confirmed by our continuing consultation with people in the village, which is associated with our developing neighbourhood plan. The scheme will meet 4 housing needs. 1 for smaller homes and bungalows for older downsizers who want to remain part of the local community. 2 shared ownership properties for young families from the village who can't afford open market housing. 3 affordable housing for young people who have grown up in the village and find it impossible to get on the open market property ladder. This includes graduates and non-graduates, and it includes innovative self-build plots, giving local people an affordable route to distinctive homes of their own. It's a sensitive proposal that is the result of a long-term partnership. This proposal is the result of collaboration between Norton Parish Council and Midlands Rural Housing Association. The proposal reflects the unique skills and understanding of each partner. We have worked hard together to optimise the mix of homes for Norton's current needs, to minimise the impact on neighbouring properties, and to pick architectural detailing and materials that harmonise with the village context. We believe it builds on existing success. The scheme is an extension to Gouldens View, which is the site of 6 affordable homes completed in 2008. Since that time, these properties have added to the vibrance and sustainability of the village by providing homes for the retired, for families and for young people. We are confident this development will be equally successful. This application is important in the delivery of a sustainable future for Norton, and we sincerely ask that you give it your approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No local member for Norton here?
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Smith, you're a local member. You will go first then, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm broadly in support of this. It's a pleasant change to see affordable housing and market housing in a nice spot, not sort of wedged in a corner somewhere. So yeah, I'm in support of this. Clearly, the Housing Needs Survey has identified a need. I'm familiar with Gouldens View. I mean, it's a nice spot. I think it's a pleasant surprise when you get something like this coming forward. Norton is a vibrant village. It needs to continue to be so, and this is providing much needed quality housing for all. So yeah, this has my support, and to such an extent, I would like to propose we approve this approve this application.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Irving Swift, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, please, very briefly. The first speaker who didn't oppose the idea thought that we might come with a better proposal in landscaping. Is that possible to be added to the proposal? Is that too late? Or has the parish with the rural association with the officer did their optimal? Or can we add something to soften the boundary and make it more part of the agricultural scene? But otherwise, I fully second that, because it's a great news for villages, and I wish we could have that in a number of our villages. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you can add it, but I'll ask Catherine to verify that. Catherine, can you add? Can it be added that you can have some more cover there?
There is a landscaping scheme proposed, or landscaping condition proposed for condition number 12. So, so I take what members say, and potentially that can sort of be added to sort of the overall screening. There's also one regarding boundary treatments, sort of on condition number 14 as well, just to make sure sort of the overall character is minimized, or the impact is minimized by the landscaping. In addition, I don't know if I made myself clear in my presentation that the section 106 is for the affordable housing, for the provision of the public open space to be then transferred over to the parish council, and also the library contribution, which is highlighted in the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you need addition of words for that to be carried out, or can you encompass the views of the committee, if that is the views of the committee, within the existing wording?
Yes, no, it's a landscaping scheme and the boundary treatment. So I can put a note on the application to ensure that the applicant is aware that it includes quite decent boundary along the sides. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, any other speakers, Tony?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Harris and Councillor Ritchie. Okay,
Councillor Harris first, followed by Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. It's one small point. Again, I would broadly be in favour of this. It's exactly what villages need, this type of development to support local people who wish to downsize and those looking for affordable homes. It's one query really, probably for Catherine. It's on page 49, fourth paragraph, in relation to the bungalows. There's a comment made that they don't meet space standards, I think, for storage. Is that something that needs a condition? I know there is a comment that it will be addressed, but it's really just to make sure that it is addressed.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, yes, it has been addressed. So they've amended the plans to ensure that that's the case.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not against this proposal, but I can say that I'm enthusiastic about it. A lot has been made of the housing needs survey. I'm right. I've looked through all our papers, but we don't seem to have been provided with the evidence that it claims supports the need for this particular development. I'd be interested to know too that if it is going to be affordable housing, has there been thought for affordable transport? It must be from the site. The best part, perhaps not half a mile, but not far short of half a mile, to get to the centre of Norton. And Norton is not exactly a place where you have buses flying past every few minutes. Is there simply an assumption that even if you can't afford a house, if you can afford one here, you've also got to be able to buy a car to go with it? I just feel in terms of siting. However, the thing that surprised me most about the application, over the coming years, it is anticipated that Norton is going to be surrounded, at least around its west, its north, and perhaps partly on the east side, by a massive housing development. It's been argued that to preserve the character of Norton as a village, that there needs to be space of sort of some open fields between this massive housing estate and the village, so that the village can retain its village character. In these circumstances, given that 3 sides of Norton are about to be ruined by, at least visually ruined, by by this extensive building this estate, it seems strange that the only side of Norton that is left looking out into attractive rural countryside is where you should want to build a new group of houses. To me, that doesn't actually seem to make much sense, but I'd be interested for any views from the officers as to why this should be, and whether there were any other sites that were looked at, and whether there was any consideration at all of what the future of Norton was likely to be when the Churchfields estate is eventually built.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Over to you, Officer Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, no, I'm sure sort of other sites were considered. It's not just about sort of siting, it's also having availability of those sites to meet that housing need. This site has come up, and following extensive negotiations with the parish council, has been deemed acceptable by them and also by our policy officers as well, to meet the housing needs survey. In regards to the Churchfield development, yes, that's in the local plan, allocated land, and we do have an application in which is currently being determined. And who knows when potentially it may be developed, but this scheme will provide a need for Norton itself, and therefore it's deemed to be acceptable on those bases as an exception site. So in planning terms, it's considered to be acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Any more speakers, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Okay, we have a proposal that the application be approved, which has been seconded, with the emphasis on some additional, with a note on the emphasis on some additional landscaping. All those in favour, please indicate when the roll call takes place. Over to you, Marina.
Councillor Chandler,
For, Chairman.
Councillor Cribbin,
For.
Councillor Dabbs,
For.
Councillor Frost,
For.
Councillor Harris,
For.
Councillor Irving Swift,
For.
Councillor James,
For.
Councillor Matton,
For.
Councillor Parker,
For.
Councillor Ritchie,
For.
Councillor Robertson, Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. The application is approved. Right. The next one is in Brixworth. Again, it's you to present it, Catherine, and it's 0217.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen again. So, yeah, just bear with me. This site has been subject to a number of changes and alterations as a result of consultation. It's for a stable building adjacent to Frog Hill Barn in Frog Hill and Brixworth. Originally, when the application was submitted, the barn was going to be located here, or the stable building was going to be located here. However, following comments from both our landscape officer and our conservation officer, it was deemed that it was going to be resited here. In addition to, within the negotiation process, the actual stable building has been reduced from 5.8 metres to 3.1 metres in height. As you can see, the ground sort of falls away, so the stable block is going to be there. Here's a photo montage of what it would look like in the street scene once built, because the ground level does drop away after the brick war. So these are the properties, and these are the church spires, or the church spire for Brixworth. Again, this is the existing view at the moment. So this is the proposed stable block. So you can see here, sited in the front. This building here has got a approval for conversion into residential. Again, these are the photos looking down Frog Hill. So that again, the stable building proposed is going to be there. The parish council object to the proposal because of the impact on sort of the character and appearance of the locality. It is for a stable building within the open countryside or outside the confines of the village. As officers, we don't consider that the view of, or an important view towards the church is significantly impacted as a result of this proposed development. So again, these are the views along Frog Hill itself. Again, you can see with the church in the background. Overall, the application is recommended for approval. You note that this was a street view picture back in 2009, where there's dilapidated buildings just by the by the war. So overall, actually, officers do consider it as an improvement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. I've got a speaker listed, but isn't it Marina that we haven't got the speaker now? Can't hear you.
No, the speaker is Sally Stroman, and I believe she is within the meeting.
She is. Well, I do beg your pardon then, Sally Stone. You will have 3 minutes to speak on the application.
Thank you, Chair. My client and their appointed advisors have been involved in extensive and proactive discussions with both the planning officer and the council's conservation officer in resolving this application for the construction of a stable block building. Furthermore, the applicant has spoken with the owners of Rosemary Cottage, sited directly opposite to the application site, and we believe have addressed their concerns. My client and I have sought to work with your officers to address matters originally raised by resiting the proposed building adjacent to the existing barn on the site where work has commenced to convert to a residential dwelling. In addition, not at the request of your officers, the size of the building has been reduced to now provide for 3 stables rather than 4 stables as originally proposed. In addition, the roof pitch has been reduced from 20 degrees to 15 degrees. Originally, the proposed stable building was to be sited on an existing concrete raised floor slab. However, it is now intended that this will be broken up. These 2 further revisions will reduce the height of the proposed building by a further 500 mm. To confirm, the height of the stable building has been reduced to approximately 3.1 metres. Originally, the height of the proposed building was 5.8 metres. As confirmed within the officer's report, this location conforms to the advice within the council's supplementary planning guidance, and the proposed design and use of materials are appropriate and fit in with the rural landscape. The application site is outside of the Brixworth conservation area. However, it is to be sited immediately adjacent to it. The conservation officer confirms that the proposal before you responds positively to her original concerns. Furthermore, the officer states that the proposed development would not prejudice the views in and out of the conservation area, as well as allowing the views of the open countryside to be maintained. The proposed building is appropriate in regard to its use, scale and location, thereby meeting the requirements of policy RA6 of the local plan. Objections have been raised by third parties on the size of the proposed building and its location, but as outlined in the officer's report, the top section of the roof and the top section of the gable will now only be visible, as shown by the proposed views presented by your officers this evening. Previously, there were a number of outbuildings and structures associated with the larger agricultural barn. Remnants are still evident on the site. One of these outbuildings was positioned in the same location as the proposed stable. As such, the reintroduction of a building of similar scale and siting is appropriate in this location. We will reinforce the views of the planning officer that the proposed development would not adversely impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties. To confirm, the existing stone wall is to be retained and the stables will be served by the existing access, which will also serve the new residential dwelling. As such, we consider the design and appearance of the proposed building
3 minutes, Chair.
Respect the surrounding area and the amenity of residential properties. Accordingly, I would request that you grant planning permission for this development. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I was thinking you weren't here.
No problem.
Right. I can clearly see you are now. Right. We have got 2 local members, Councillor Parker and Councillor Harris. Don't know which one wants to go first. Councillor Parker, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'll kick off if you want, Chair. Yes, thank you. I wish to object to this proposal for the following policy reasons. The proposal is against RA1, A, B and C. It is not within the confines of the village and is in open countryside. Therefore, RA6 comes into play. The stable block does not meet the criteria set out in RA6. The officer on page 71 states, furthermore, the Brixworth Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan states farm buildings form a positive contribution to the character of the conservation area where they are retained and maintained. Note the words retained and maintained. there's not been a farm building there for at least 12 years. Also, the officer states, the proposal will improve the tidiness of this immediate location, improving the view for the nearby residential occupiers. I'm not sure how the view can be improved when there's a building not there and you're going to put a building there. So I'm slightly confused how that will actually improve the view. The officer is correct in stating that typically stables are located outside the confines of the village within an area of open countryside. Policy RA6 of the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan, Part 2, states that development for equestrian use that is an appropriate scale for its location, which has no significant impact on the character, beauty and tranquility, is supported development. The stables are in open countryside, 3 meters from the conservation area and next to houses. There will be an environmental impact on nearby houses, the officer states. I refer to the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health regarding livery yards. It states, careful consideration must be given to the location of muck heaps with regard to contamination of drainage courses given the high nitrogen content. Similarly, they should be sited as far away as possible from nearby residential accommodation to prevent smell, nuisance, and the problems caused by flies, particularly during hot weather. There is a house less than 15 meters from the proposed building with a prevailing wind down from the proposed stables. There is bound to be a smell issue, which is why stables are located far from residential properties. This will become a statutory nuisance. With reference to ENV 7, great weight should be given to the conservation of heritage assets, irrespective of the level of harm. The neighbourhood plan has a view down Froggle to the church. The church dates back to 680 AD and it's a grade 1 listed building. This view is also in the village design statement. The view and the street scene will be compromised, which is against ENV 7. If neighbourhood plans mean anything, they should be adhered to in planning matters. Whilst the height has been reduced, the building still measures 15.1 metres wide and 9.7 metres deep. I therefore propose to go against officers' advice as it is against numerous policies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. But you're not making a proposal.
I will make a proposal to go against officers' advice, Chair.
Yes, but you've got to give planning reasons then.
Yes, certainly. MPPF 170 A and B, RA1 ABC, RA6, ENV 7, Neighbourhood Plan Policy 3 View 11, Brixworth Village Design Statement, LG1 and photos 65 and 68.
So not many then. Okay.
No, just those, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Councillor, first of all, do you have a seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second.
Okay, and you wish to speak as well, Councillor Harris, so you're on now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, really just to re-emphasise the points already made by Councillor Parker. Catherine, I don't know if it's possible to reshare the photographs, particularly the photograph of Google Plan from 2009, if that's possible, which shows the elevation. Yes, at the bottom, that one. Yeah, thank you. It's very difficult to see from here, but the all of this paneling, all of this old stuff you see in front of you is no longer there. But there is a house to the right, which was redeveloped in 2009. So that shows you exactly the proximity of the neighbouring house. It's right next door, literally right next door. To echo the points that Councillor Parker made, on a practical level, there is the muck heap issue. It's a 3-horse stable. 3 horses, it's probably at least 6 wheelbarrow loads a day of muck. So where exactly is that going to go? There is the pest issue, there is potential contamination as already highlighted. It's not clear from the report also whether or not the conservation officer now agrees to this. Points were made by the conservation officer in the report on page 63 in regards to, clearly it's not just the stables themselves, but there will probably be hard parking, horse turning, horse boxes, horse trailers. That's clearly going to have a negative effect on the setting and affect the panoramic views. So really just to echo the points made and say I would very clearly like to second rejection of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Tony, speakers.
Chairman, Catherine would like to come back, and then we've got Councillor James and Councillor Irving Swift. Okay,
Catherine, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to come back on sort of the proposal for refusal, because at the moment we've got our landscape officer who has got no objections to the proposal, and also our conservation officer has not got any objections to the proposal. So we haven't really got sort of heritage grounds potentially to refuse it. Obviously, members have got their own opinion. I know sort of Councillor Harris said that there's no evidence that the conservation officer has removed their objection. However, if you go to page 64 of the report, the comments received following the most recent amended plans, number 3, states, "This responds positively to my concerns. I have no further comments. This is based on my understanding that there be no change to the existing stone boundary walls and no widening of the vehicular access." And if you are minded to approve the amended scheme, would you put a condition on to restrict changes to the appearance of the building? However, as stables do not have any permitted development allowances, then that would have to be an application in any case, so there's no point removing those. As you would see from, if I share my screen again, sort of as you can see, the site sort of slopes away. You've got existing buildings which are taller, whereas the proposed stable building is a lot lower, only extending about 1.3 above the existing wall. So overall, it's considered the impact will be minimal. I know that there's potential being concerns about noise and smells to adjoining properties. Not sort of in cases of stables, normally it's not an issue if the stables are relatively cleaned out. There are a number of stables in close proximity to other residential properties within the district. In any case, if there is a nuisance through noise or smells, then our environmental health officers can consider that at that time. However, it's not a reason, officers consider it's not a reason for refusal of this planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Going back to the proposer for a second, Councillor Parker, on hearing what the planning officer says, do you still wish to use all the reasons that you gave?
I still believe that RA6, ENV7, the neighbourhood plan and the Brixworth Village design statement and the MPPF 170 are still relevant.
Right, so you just want the ones you've just talked about to be the reasons then?
Yes, please, Chair.
Okay, you're happy with that, seconder?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Okay, and I'll carry on to the speakers. Councillor James. You're muted.
I've looked at this application with care and looked at it in the context of what takes place elsewhere in the district in most of the villages. And if I take my own village here, there are several houses with stables which are within the immediate precincts of the main house. And particularly in my case here, I've got a pair of stables about I would say not more than 45, 50 foot in front of my lounge window. I put it there by choice for security reasons. But most of the others in the village are closely situated to the house for similar reasons. There was a time, of course, in Daventry when there were several houses with stables in my lifetime, within quite close to the centre. For example, the old stone house where Tesco's is now. But out in the countryside, a stable is, or a set of stables, a range of buildings for equine use, is almost essential. They add to the rural scene. And some of them can be very attractive indeed. And they really do create an atmosphere of being out in the village. This particular application here is for a stable block that's on the periphery of a village and looks out onto open countryside. And part of it protected, of course, by a stone wall. Now, I note that the applicant has bent over backwards in this case by reducing the height of the stables to the absolute minimum level of 3.1 metres. My own, which are standard Scots of Thrapston Hunter stables, are actually 3.6 metres to the height of the roof. So they're lower than the norm. And that is a minimum height for stabling, really, because if you have lighting in there, or you have power in there, which is really necessary to have, a full-sized horse can rear up quite easily and electrocute itself by gnawing at the cables. So, I think the applicant has done very well. He's not only reduced the size of the development, there are not so many stables now, but reduced the height of it. As I say, if you can't have a stable in the countryside, then where can you have a stable? It's as simple as that. And I'd be quite happy if the suggested proposal fails. I would be quite happy to propose that we go with officer's advice on this application and approve it. Thank you,
Councillor James. Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, I am speaking. I am the county councillor for the Brixford division. We all understand that the applicant has worked very closely and tried to mitigate as much as she could. Now, it's a very nice rural part of the village. As you know, I think the Brickfast Church, which is one of the most ancient church north of the Alp, to be without interruption, to have services, has been eroded, all the characters. So that will be another little niggly bit when you arrive from that view. I think David James can speak about when we had stable, when we have, long times ago. Councillor James is entitled to his opinion. But now you have two local members. Brixworth will have, is a parish who have spent a lot of time with their neighbourhood plan. So I would rather for all of us to listen to what the local member has to say, and maybe for the applicant to review or reduce or not have three stable but one, or do something else. Now also, and that is for the proposal, because it's quite certain that the applicant will appeal. I would like the officer to have a very minimal cause for refusal, so like that it could not be overturned. So could I ask the proposer if we could even narrow the reason for refusal, as it might be easier for the officer to defend in case of appeal. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure he's heard what you said, so if he wishes to, I'm sure he'll wish to speak shortly. Right, speakers, Tony.
Catherine would like to come back again, Chairman, and also Councillor Chandler.
Okay, Catherine first and Councillor Chandler next.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to reiterate really that the Conservation Officer has got no objections to the proposal. Now, if they did think there was going to be harm to the conservation area, or especially the church, then they would have raised it, knowing our conservation officers. So that's all I just wanted to highlight, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I simply wanted to point out that the proposal as described and illustrated would not in any way detract from the view of the church from that direction, because all you can see of the church from that direction is the spire sticking up above the trees. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Chandler. Right, any more speakers, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Okay, we have a proposal then. Unless you want to do what Councillor Irving Swift said, do you want to alter the reasons at all, or are you happy with the reasons, Councillor Parker? I cannot hear you, Councillor Parker.
Muted, Councillor Parker.
You're still muted. Oh dear, we have a communications problem. Put your hand up if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. Beg your pardon. You probably can't see me. No, I'll still stick with the 4 I said on the second time round, Chair.
Thank you. And you're happy with that seconder, so that we're dead clear?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have a proposal that the application be refused for the given reasons the second time around, the 4 reasons. All those in favour, please indicate whether you're in favour of the proposal for refusal to our wonderful clerk, who will call your name out.
Councillor Chandler.
Against.
Councillor Cribbin.
Against.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
In favour of refusal.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
You're muted, Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Or refusal.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
Against.
And the count is
7-5.
7 in favour and 5 against, Chair.
Right, okay. That didn't seem like that to me.
So the Chair, 7 in favour of the proposal to refuse, so the application is refused.
Yeah, okay. Well, if 2 officers are certain of that, that's fair enough. Okay, the application is refused on those 4 reasons. Thank you. We move on to the next one when I find my mixed up sheet. The next application is in Bowden, and the application number is 0378. Yes, I think so. Over to you again, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen again. Okay, this is an application within the village of Boughton. It is for the conversion of an existing building to 2 dwellings. It's within the conservation area. It's not a listed building, but it is a local, it's a local, important local building within the conservation area plan. So this is the existing site. As you can see, this is Church Street and this is Humphrey Lane. There is an existing stable block here, which has already got planning permission back a number of years ago for the conversion into separate residential use. And also this is the main building here, which potentially was 2 dwellings many years ago, but it's been converted into a single dwelling. Now, this stable block potentially could have been sold as a separate unit, as there's no conditions based on that application. However, it has retained into the same ownership. So as you can see here, the proposal splits the existing property into two here by the bay window. There are some windows proposed, and as when we go through the photos, you'll get to see the overall changes. There's a proposed gable elevation here, but that's on top of an existing flat roof element. So actually this part is an improvement. And you see there's an existing porch here, which will be replaced by a canopy, as you can see in the elevation plans here. A new doors being proposed here and a window being proposed here. There is also a window proposed on the front elevation as well here. An existing window is also located here. However, it is going to be changed into patio doors. So the main concerns really is highway safety. I know through late representations, you've got comments by the adjoining neighbour about noise and disturbance through the use of this area as a garden area or an amenity space. However, it can be used as an amenity space already. There's sufficient distances between the neighbouring properties and that sort of thing through overlooking, or there's existing mutual overlooking in any case. So this is the existing entrance to the site. If we go through the slides, you get a step-by-step guidance of going in through the site. So this is, again, it does not meet highway standards, but then again, most properties built in that era were built prior to cars and were not being built to modern day standards. The concerns from the Highway Authority are about the intensification of the existing access by the conversion from 2 houses up to 3 houses in a sense. But considering it's an existing large house and it's been converted to 2 properties, 2 smaller properties, that this impact or the additional traffic is not considered significant enough to warrant refusal. You can see the different land levels. So this is the stable building, and this is the area here which will be replaced with the gable element here. So overall, the application is being recommended for approval. Members will note the late representations about a couple of additional conditions, and then 1 amended condition relating to permitted development rights regarding the walls, an additional landscaping condition as well. You also noted late representations of the neighbouring property commenting on this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Now, this is the one where the speaker feels that his points have been covered. So we don't have a speaker speaking on this. So it's over to you, members. There isn't a local member here, I don't think, for Boughton, is there? No. So if you can indicate if you'd like to speak on it, Tony would be grateful.
Councillor Irving-Swift, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Irving-Swift.
Yes, I would like to go with officer advice as the only reason was truly for access of highway, and it may be nice to have 2 smaller houses in a village, and it doesn't change really the appearance in the village, and you could say that with a 2 gable it's better. So I would like to go and propose to go with officer advice.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Yes, I can see a hand waving. Councillor Chancellor, I think it is. Councillor Chancellor, wish to speak? You're muted.
Chairman, I agree with what's just been said. I can see no reason at all not to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Any speakers, Tony?
Councillor Wesley, Chairman.
Councillor Wesley.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I was just going to lower my hand. I was going to say I'd second Councillor Irving-Smith's proposal. I can't see anything wrong with this at all, really. So let's carry on. Thank you.
Okay. Any more speakers? If so, raise your hand.
None indicated, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, we have a proposal that the application be approved, and it's been seconded. All those in favour? Over to you, Marina, for the roll call.
Councillor Chandler,
For.
Councillor Cribbin,
For.
Councillor Dabbs,
For.
Councillor Frost,
For.
Councillor Harris,
For.
Councillor Irving-Swift,
For.
Councillor James,
For.
Councillor Matton,
For.
Councillor Parker,
For.
Councillor Ritchie,
For.
Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. The application is approved. Well, really going well tonight, aren't we? Right, the next application is in Daventry and it's 0424. Again, over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, members will recognise this site because it wasn't long ago that it came to members. It's the Knoll site within Daventry, which has got permission. It's only come to committee tonight is because it's a DDC owned land. So the purposes of this application is the variation of the existing permission, because what they would like to do is revisions to the site levels, which actually lower the buildings down by about 2 meters. So if I go to the approved plans, which you can see in the area which is pink here, that was all retaining walls. Now what they're proposing to do is build it sort of further down, so the need for retaining walls has actually been reduced. So you can see by the amount of pink area that the overall retaining wall element has been reduced, and given that it's about a 2 meter reduction, the impact on the locality will actually be reduced. The other thing is, if you noticed on the existing layout, the turning area here is also proposed to be altered, so it allows for better flow of traffic throughout the whole site. So really those are the two only alterations to sort of the approved plans. The existing elevations remain the same, as you can see by the presentation. So nothing else really changes. Overall, it considers that what's occurred is what's going to be proposed occurring is an improvement. Yes, there are going to be potentially some more loss of trees, but the site is well screened on sort of the boundary with the sort of the roads. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have no speaker. The local member is Councillor Matton. You wish to speak, Councillor Matton?
Yes, I do remember this application and its approval, and I said at that time how good it was that this site was being developed to create employment for the area. I think this has only come up in front of us because it's administrative, because it came up before. It's all improvements. It is a shame about a loss of trees in these climate times, I acknowledge, but officers have pointed out that that's going to be hard to resist anyway, and I think probably the improvements outweigh the loss of those few trees, and I would like to propose that we approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Matton. Do you have a seconder? I can see a thumb up from Councillor James. Councillor James, you wish to speak?
No, that's fine. I might.
Okay. Any speakers on this?
None indicated, Chairman.
Okay, well, it's a straightforward one. If it hadn't have been our application, it would have been a delegated approval anyway. Okay, we have a proposal the application be approved. It's been seconded. All those in favour, roll call, please.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Cribbin. Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. Right, the application is approved. And now we go on to a bit of work by our other planning officer. Application in Barbie. Application 452. Over to you, Eamon.
Can you hear, Chairman?
Yep, we can hear you.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. By way of update, as I set out in the late representations, I thought we would verbally update members on the appeal decision in respect to the second application. And we can confirm that that appeal decision on the 19th of August was to dismiss the appeal. So pretty much the application that's before us tonight is identical to the one considered by the inspector. I'm not going to spend time going through the drawings. It's probably suffice it to go to the photograph of the property itself. And this is the subject proposal, which was the subject of the dismissal of the second appeal. As regards the current applications before Planning Committee this evening, again, in the report we intimated that the applicant had indicated he would be lodging an appeal against non-determination because he declined an invitation to agree an extension of time to allow this application to be subject to further negotiations or discussions pending the outcome of the second appeal. Our understanding is that that appeal against non-determination has been formally lodged with the Planning Inspectorate, but it hasn't yet been validated by the Planning Inspectorate. So in short, the Planning Committee is free to determine the application as it sees fit this evening, having regard to the officer's report and also the representations made by the applicant, which I believe are to be read out. There's not much more to add, Chairman, in terms of the report. Having considered the fact that the second appeal was dismissed based on officer's recommendations previously, the fact that the proposal hasn't changed since that time, and the current application is in effect the same proposal, we're recommending the application be refused, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. We have the applicant down as a speaker, but I think Tony will be reading some words out from him. But should the words go over 3 minutes, again, the same rules will apply. I will be told when the 3 minutes are up, and I'm afraid, Tony, you'll have to stop on his behalf. So over to you, Tony, to read the words from Steve Barnes, who's the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. The proposal is a resubmission of a previous planning application for a front entrance to property, a porch that was refused planning permission for the erection of a single-storey front extension retrospective on the 8th of April 2020. The size, design and appearance is exactly the same, but it is a porch and not a single-storey front extension as previously registered. The only reason it needs planning permission is because of its height to apex at 3.4, 0.4 above permitted development. As shown on the submitted drawing, the floor area of the porch, which encloses a front entrance door, does not exceed 3 square metres and stands more than 2 metres from the highway as defined under Class D, Part 1 of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order 2015. With regard to other planning restrictions, A, my property is not a maisonette or a converted property, or a property created through the permitted development rights to change use. B, as far as I'm aware, there is not an Article 4 direction or a condition on the original planning consent for my property that restricts permitted development rights. C, my property is not listed and it is not situated within a conservation area or other forms of heritage asset sites of historic interest. Section 12 of the NPPF talks about achieving well-designed places. The level of detail and degree of prescription should be tailored to the circumstances and should allow suitable degree of variety and design, and should not be used by the decision maker as a valid reason to object to the development. Policy ENV 10 focuses on high quality design of development that reflects and integrates with the surrounding area, whilst policy BOGP1 mentions that all new development will be expected to enhance the positive attributes and local design feature. Policy BOD1 also has regard to development. Briefly, proposals must make a positive contribution, taking into account local identity and sense of place, suitable overall design and appearance, size and scale, and where possible, reuse local and traditional materials. The LPA contend that the main issue with the design is the height and link to the front dormer. To lower the roof below the limits of the front dormer would look unbalanced and unsightly. Equally, a monopitch roof would look out of place. That is why I had very little choice but to link it with the dormer extension. Furthermore, I could replace a pitched roof altogether and replace it with a flat roof. The porch would then not require planning permission, but would look totally out of character. While
3 minutes, Chairman.
Can you finish,
the next
please,
point?
Tony?
Yeah. Whilst I accept that each application is dealt with on its merits, according to street scene and character, etc., there are many examples in the village that demonstrate that there is no consistency in the decision-making process. I'll end it there, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And remember, committee, that's not Tony Gillett's words. That's Tony Gillett speaking on behalf of an applicant that couldn't be here. Right, we have a local member. Well, we've got a couple of local members. No, we've got one local member here who wishes to speak. At least I hope she's there. Catherine, are you there, Catherine?
Yes.
Yes.
Can
Yes,
you hear
you
me?
are.
Right, thank you very much. The applicant is a builder and therefore he should know what the rules are. As this extension has been for the second time refused on appeal, it would be perverse not to follow officer's advice and refuse it this evening for the reasons given in the report and by the inspector in his appeal decision. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Catherine. I think you've said it all. Tony, have you got a list of people?
No members at the moment, but the planning officer would like to come back, and then Councillor Irving Swift, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, Eamon, and then Councillor Irving Swift.
You're muted, Eamon.
Got it. Just for the purposes of clarification, Chairman, in the applicant's address to committee, he suggested that merely dropping the height to permitted development levels would mean the proposal didn't require planning permission. Factually, that's incorrect. Our enforcement investigators measured the porch as constructed, and the floor area actually exceeds permitted development tolerances. So in order to achieve permitted development tolerances, he would need to reduce the floor area as well as the height. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you for that information. Councillor Irving Swift.
Well,
You're
I'm
muted.
sorry, I was quick to raise my hand and I would like to go with officer advice. I echo exactly what Councillor Lomax said. I think it's so rare that our officers refuse nowadays, and on top on an appeal. I think it would be foolish, in my view, to go against officer advice. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're making that as a proposal. Do you have a seconder? Can somebody put a hand up if you've got a seconder?
Councillor
Yes,
Chandler.
I can see it. Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing to add. I think it's very clear on this one. Thank you.
Right. Tony, any more speakers?
None indicated, Chairman.
Okay. We have a proposal that the application be refused as per officer's advice, which has been seconded. Over to you, Marina, for the roll call.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Dabbs,
For.
Councillor Frost,
For.
Councillor Harris,
For.
Councillor Irving Swift,
For.
Councillor James,
For.
Councillor Matton,
For.
Councillor Parker,
For.
Councillor Ritchie,
For.
Councillor Wesley,
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. The application is refused. The next and last application is 0452, 462, I beg your pardon, in Helidon, which is again over to you, Eamon.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Well, I'll try a screen share. No, that's the wrong one.
It's got a porch.
That's the wrong one again. Right, can we see that, Chairman?
No.
Okay. The joys of modern technology.
Don't worry, you'll get used to it, Eamon.
Eventually. Right, let's try that one.
Yes, we've got
Can you
it.
see that? Yep.
Yep, yep.
Okay, Chairman. Again, this is an application for an agricultural building in a field just outside Helidon Village. Helidon is just to the west here, part of a designated conservation area. The land also sits in a special landscape area. As you can see from the description of the report, this is in lieu of a previously approved agricultural building. And just for the purposes of background, that building was approved under a prior notification process, whereby the issues of siting and appearance were to be considered. Originally, that application came in for the building roughly in that location, but eventually was approved roughly in this location, slightly further down the hill, i.e. less prominent, etc., which officers judged to be acceptable. The current applications before members obviously seeks to revert back to the original position on the basis that the applicant's operational requirements and justifications is that it's better suited in this location. And if we get simply to the crux of the issue, the site will be accessed from the existing field access, as you'll see from the report that was approved some time ago, via an existing track that will run up alongside an existing field hedge to this area. And this is roughly where the building is going to be located. That feature is hay bales, which are at 3 sort of high. So it's around about 3.5 meters high. So the building roughly at 8 meters high is going to be in that view, breaking the skyline. And it is going to be visible. So there's no getting away from that. But the principle of an agricultural building on the site has been accepted. The issue for members and for officers was whether or not the proposal would have a significant adverse effect, which is the test of the relevant policies on the landscape and the quality of the special landscape area. And we consider that the proposal, whilst visible in sort of more immediate settings, etc., in terms of the wider landscape, either is not readily visible, not having a significant impact, or can be mitigated by way of a landscape scheme as recommended in the conditions set out in the report, Chairman. The various views I will go through. There's not really much more to add other than to say this is one where do you accept agricultural buildings within the rural landscape as being part of the rural scene, and whether or not such new buildings have such a significant impact, or can that impact be mitigated to a sufficient level to make them acceptable in planning terms, Chairman? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eamon. 2 speakers we have. Tony Brown first, parish meeting. So one of the two, is that Catesby or Helidon? Over to you, sir. Tony Brown.
Chairman, I've got the statement that was been submitted by Tony Brown from Helidon Parish Meeting. He's asked to be read out as he can't be at the meeting this evening. So if you're content, I'll read that out.
Carry on.
Okay, so representation from Helidon Parish Meeting. We ask the committee to reject this application on the following grounds. Point 1, the barn will be on high ground, 190 metres, and will be readily visible above the skyline from a considerable distance in all directions. The site is located just below the 190 metre AMSL contour, making it some of the highest ground in Northamptonshire, where the highest point is Arbury Hill at 224 metres. It is prominently visible from a great distance through about 180 degrees of the compass. Therefore, an 8-metre tall barn will be highly visible from the west end of the village and from some of its houses situated in the conservation area. A separate document has been submitted with photographic evidence to support this objection. Point 2, the barn location has already been rejected in a previous application due to the unsuitability of its siting. The proposed barn is larger in footprint and height. Point 3, the location and position of the barn contravenes DDC's own supplementary planning guidelines, design and location of agricultural buildings in the following sections, which is quoting from that document. 1, in general, agricultural buildings should be sited in inconspicuous locations, compatible with their functional requirements, and where they have the least impact on the surrounding landscape, buildings and residents. Particular care must be taken to the siting of buildings located in a special landscape area, conservation area, or adjacent to or within the curtilage of a listed building. New buildings should normally form part of a group rather than stand in isolation, apart from where this may result in visual conflict with traditional buildings. Buildings should be sited to take advantage of local topography, preferably in discrete concealed locations. They will not be permitted to break the skyline or intrude into the existing landform when seen from critical viewpoints. Point 4, the justification document cites that the building will be located further from the village than the previous application location. The village would prefer that the building was located in its previously agreed location rather than being in such a prominent location. Point 5, providing screening for such a tall building will take at least 10 years for the trees to mature. In conclusion, we feel that the location of the proposed barn is totally unacceptable and would urge the planning committee to reject the application and revert to the previous decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Bear in mind, he was speaking on behalf of Tony Brown. All right, Teresa Ringer, who's the applicant? If you're there, you've got 3 minutes as well.
Hello, can you see me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you anyway.
Brilliant. Good evening. My name is Teresa Ringer and I'm a resident of the village of Helidon at Leam House. I'm also one of the 3 partners of the Leam Farm Partnership, which owns and farms land of approximately 220 acres at the edge of the village. We have now had the privilege of living in Helidon for over 4 years and have farmed the land adjacent to the village for the same period. At times, this has been very challenging, as currently there are no agricultural buildings on the farm at all that can either house livestock or farm equipment. In particular, lambing has been very difficult with high losses owing to inclement weather and the lack of any covered space. We have a great respect for Helidon and its residents and realise that the construction of any building in or close to a village will always have some objections. However, in making our application, we have taken into account the following factors, which are largely supported by the local authority and its advisors in recommending the application for approval. These considerations are: the farm needs a building to be viable, and there are very few areas on the property where it is feasible to erect a building without having a negative visual impact on the village of Helidon. In making our application, we have been particularly concerned about the environment impact of any building. To construct the building on the originally proposed site could have caused both a detrimental environment impact to the watercourse and lakes at Leam House as a result of the downslope and direction of drainage from the barn, and negative impact to the well-being of livestock owing to the lack of air circulation on lower ground, a factor mentioned in the report of the planning officer and our farming consultant in his report. We have reviewed the objections raised by the Parish Council and have viewed the site from both the western end of Helidon and from Knapton Road, from where the site is reported to be visible. We have been unable to see the site from these locations. We have not viewed the site from Coventry, but are somewhat surprised to see reference to a viewpoint for a barn which is some 24 miles away from the city of Coventry. As identified in the report from the planning and landscape officers, visual aspects of the site are already significantly protected by both existing topography, hedging and trees. If required, we'd be happy to further enhance any planting to improve the visual amenity of the site. We have reviewed the report available from the planning officer and landscape officer and note that their comments confirm that the application is compliant and that the character and appearance of the Helidon Conservation Area will be preserved. Planning policy is supportive of the development as it falls within the relevant development plan. It's quite a long way from the village, and we very much hope that the committee will approve this application so that we are able to continue to farm the land at Helidon in an environmental and economically sustainable way. Thank you.
3 minutes, Chair.
Oh, you kept your time spot on there. So thank you for that. Right. Local member, which will be Councillor Frost.
Thank you, Chairman.
Helidon's yours, isn't it? Helidon Catesby.
Yeah, so to speak. Yes, thank you. Can I have a couple of questions? I have a couple of questions for Eamon, if I may. On page 2 of the delegated prior approval report associated with the previous planning application, it says that the site being discussed tonight was rejected by officers on the grounds that it would be unduly prominent in the local landscape. Why, if it was unacceptable then, is it acceptable now? I don't see what's changed.
Again, Chairman, as I tried to explain in the opening introduction, the previous building was the subject of a prior approval where issues of siting appeared to be the sole considerations in determining the location of agricultural buildings. This is a planning application. You have a wider remit. I've not suggested this proposal is less prominent than that given. What I have suggested that there are mitigating factors, such as the operational reasons given by the applicant, and mitigation by way of landscaping, and those considerations officers have taken into account and consider that on balance the proposal can be considered acceptable. Members are entitled to come to a different conclusion, and clearly that's why the application is before you this evening, Chairman.
Thank you. The point being, just for clarification, those mitigation factors weren't available or they didn't exist previously. Is that right?
It's a fair comment to say that the operational reasons given now by the applicant weren't before the council at that time. But as I said, under the prior approval process, it's the starting point is that the building is reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture. So we don't have to consider any other issues. The applicant, having got the prior approval, has obviously looked at the site and decided, for the reasons given, that it wouldn't be operationally good for them. Those are the reasons that are now before the council as the local planning authority, and before you as members. You've got to weigh those in the balance and determine whether or not those are sufficient, and mitigation as proposed in the conditions is sufficient to outweigh the limited harm. I don't deny that building will be visible in the shorter distances, as we've indicated in the photographs. But in terms of the wider landscape, we don't consider that the proposal would have a significant adverse effect, which is the wording used in one of the policies. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. My second question is around exactly that point, and just so once again we're completely covered. So we know that planning permission has already been given under number 0761 for a barn 15 metres wide by 30 metres long. But as I understand it, when the inspectors came around to check that, they found that a hard standing area had been created in preparation for a barn measuring 16 metres wide and 35 metres long, rather larger. And Yeah, I'm just trying to work out how this came about. So officers were advised by the applicants, it said in the planning document, that they intended to construct a new agricultural building where this hard-standing area had been discovered. And at that point, it says a planning application was invited. No further work has been carried on site, I guess, while this goes on about. I mean, put bluntly, can we say that this hard standing was created in a different location to where the original permission was given? I mean, put bluntly, the applicant was rumbled, weren't they?
Again, through you, Chairman, it is a matter of fact that agricultural holdings can construct hard standings without the need for prior approval. This is an operational agricultural unit. Yes, the applicant chose to build that hard standing. I would not use the words rumbled. It was brought to the council's attention. The council visited the site. The applicant explained that he was building a hard standing and wished to put the new building in that location. At that point, he was advised on the need for planning permission, and he agreed not to carry out any further work. So what exists on site probably doesn't require planning permission, probably also doesn't actually require a prior notification, because it's a hard standing reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture. What members have to consider is that it's a planning application now for a building to be constructed on that hard standing, and that is what's before members. It's not uncommon for applicants, having received permission, to go away, do the sums, have a think about what they actually need, and come back to the local planning authority and say, actually, that's not what I require now, I require something different. The applicant is doing that and following due process. The members have to decide whether or not the proposal on its planning merits is acceptable. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon.
Chairman, thank you. This applicant.
Yeah, Councillor Frost, could we have, if you're going to keep asking questions, can you ask them together so that we go back once? It's not a question and answer session.
Sure, okay, I'll finish off. It's just that this applicant has done more than reconsider their options. They've actually built hard standing for the new barn in a completely different location to where the original one was given permission. And this location is on the summit of the hill that's going to be visible from miles and miles around. I agree with the parish councils, but that is Catesby and Helidon, and I think we should respectfully ask them to put it where it was going to be originally. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, speakers, Tony.
Chairman, the council's legal officer would like to come in.
Jamie, over to you.
Chairman, thank you very much. I would just like to take the opportunity to reiterate the planning officer's view on this, that it is the point that what they've carried out is not relevant to this application, on the basis you've heard the officer say it doesn't require prior approval. It's not, the phrase "they've been rumbled" is not a phrase that should be used in planning committee in the sense that any person can carry out activity. If it comes to light that they then need planning permission, it's about being regulatory, not punitive about the position. And I just want to reiterate that the planning officer is right in saying that they've come forward with an application to seek to achieve something that works better for them.
I think in the light of that advice you've just been given, Councillor Frost, it would be better to remove your comments about rumbling. Okay, that's my advice to you. It's up to you whether you take it. Okay, that's fair enough. Right, any more speakers?
Yes, Chairman. Councillors Wesley, Chandler, Irving Swift, James and Smith.
God, I shall forget all these. Right, Councillor Wesley first then.
Thank you for letting me speak, Chair. Yeah, to me it does look a little bit flaky. There was permission for a barn around this site, but operational reasons, they do look a little bit thin to me. I mean, I don't think we've got any verification or actual facts around whether drainage will be affected, or ventilation seems particularly questionable. I'd also like to say there is, from my recollection, there is a very, very nice track and drive being put in up to this hard standing already. It is quite attractive I mean, it's a bit more than a farm track. That's from my recollection of going past it on a number of occasions. Can I just ask, is there any danger that this barn can be converted into a housing project? If I could ask planning officers for their advice on that.
Again, Chairman, I mean, the photographs before members, I'll just get to the photograph. The track is this track here, which, like any other agricultural track, runs alongside the hedge. I should point out, and again, this is probably sort of for members' consideration, in respect of the approved building, the location. If I get to here, it was actually in this location, which meant that the track serving it cut across the site, and because it's lower, you would have effectively a longer track cutting right across there. This track follows the hedge, which is not uncommon again in agricultural setups. As regards to the second question, no, they couldn't convert it to a dwelling, certainly without the benefit of planning permission, and certainly not within 10 years of the date of this permission. So again, as I've previously advised members, I don't have a looking glass. I can't see into the future. All I can say is that would require permission of some form from the council. What you have before you tonight is an agricultural building that quite reasonably is seeking planning permission for the reasons stated, and we've assessed it on that merits. Members are entitled to come to a different view in terms of its impact on the immediate landscape and the wider landscape. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. Councillor Wesley, you wish to come back?
No, Chair, that.
Okay. Right. Next speaker then is Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to make it clear to members and officers that I know about farming. My family have farmed for more than 500 years. I think you need to take into account a number of factors. Firstly, the farmer knows the land better than anybody, and they know where it's suitable for what kind of activity. Secondly, and more importantly, there's an aspect of animal welfare here, in that the farm lacks any buildings at all at the moment, so there's nowhere for the livestock to be kept in shelter during the bad weather, and we've already heard that some of this ground is a bit soggy, so it's not suitable for them to overwinter on it. And thirdly, members will also be aware, I'm sure, that there has been a vast increase recently in rural crime, particularly the theft of agricultural machinery and equipment. So the need for storage, secure storage on farmland is increasing all the time. And for those reasons alone, Chairman, I have no hesitation but to recommend and propose that we go with officers' advice and approve this application.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor James.
Yes, I'm prepared to second this. We should be doing everything we can do to support British agriculture, particularly at this time. And Councillor Chandler was quite right to say there being no buildings on this farm, that if you're keeping livestock, you do need buildings. Farm animals can withstand the rain, they can withstand the wind. What they don't like is both wind and rain. You've got to get them away from that. And so few hedges now provide that sort of shelter from the prevailing winds. But my point is this, and I raised this early on in connection with those tables. What else can you do in the countryside? Is the countryside now to be just the province of those who live in suburbia, to travel out, tourism and recreation and admire views and take photographs and cycle and walk? Or is it to be there for the purpose for which farmers, yes, farmers, created that landscape in the first place, which is to provide food to put on our tables. Now, if this farmer so wished, they could simply get a whole stack of round bales, straw bales, and pile them up in the shape of a pyramid and cover them up with tarpauling and rope and old rubber tires to keep the tarpaulings down. Would those who are opposed to this application prefer that to be on the landscape, or would they prefer some of that to be kept under cover? We really do have to start considering the rural countryside and rural matters and the needs of those who live in the rural countryside. I mean, I'm quite angry this evening. I'm angry about what happened earlier on with regard to that stabling application, and I'm angry now that we're even entering into debate on this particular subject. We need to protect our farming industry and do everything we can to help them. And I've no hesitation in seconding this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Irving Swift.
Well, my family used to be farmer in France, but I will not profess that I know everything. And I live in a very lovely part in Arthingworth, and we have small farmers and a very big farmers. So I think I know a bit about farming. If I listen carefully to the proposer, when this lady spoke, they have been farming for 4 years. And unfortunately, in my division, very often we have queue permission, and my only thing, and which I do not like, is that I have seen a lot of new barn built in the most lovely position in the field, and you wait 10 years and you have a house. So that is my things. I do not like it. They have been farming just for 4 years. I think I heard correctly, because if I have been hearing wrong, please put me right. If they would have been farming for 20 years or 3 generations, they will have known the farm. For 4 years, they knew what they were buying, where they were doing. I'm sorry, I had sheep in my paddock. I knew exactly that I have sheep in my paddock and I didn't have shelter in my paddock. I knew that, and I did that for 4 years. So I am going to be like Councillor James. I'm going to be very upset when we are told that we cannot make our point of view. And I am absolutely behind the farming community, because I live among the farming community, and I have a good relationship with farmers. But to be 4 years into farming now, I don't call that a long-standing farming life. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought the lady said that she'd lived in Helidon for 4 years, and not necessarily she'd been a farmer for 4 years, but I may have been wrong, but that's what I thought she'd said. Right, the next speaker is, oh dear, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to say I absolutely support our rural communities and farmers. I've myself farmed in France for 5 years. My concern with this is really the location, is to put it in such a prominent spot. I do question why. I've read through the justification statement, which was amongst the papers, and it details about ventilation. Now, I understand the ventilation requirements, and by needing to place every farm building that has livestock in it on top of a hill is just misleading, to say the least. Any air movement for an agricultural building needs to be actually monitored from a still air or calm day with no wind. So I think, you know, members could easily be misled if they were to read that justification statement. It's simply not true. I mean, we were all aware, I'm sure, of agricultural buildings that are down in valleys and all sorts. You have to obviously make some adjustments to make them work. But so, yeah, please, members, you know, that's not necessarily the case, as I say, to put a building on top of almost one of the highest spots in the county. we've had a reference to the waste or water, etc., etc. It's for any landowner. It's their responsibility to ensure that we don't get any pollution or whatever from a particular building or whatever. It's tricky. I support farmers. I don't support the position of this particular building. It wouldn't have to be very far from the suggested spot to not have such a detrimental effect on the community. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I'll just be quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers, Tony?
Yes, Chairman. Eamon would like to come back, and then we've got Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Frost.
I'm sorry, but I lost a bit of internet connection. Yeah, can you repeat the names?
Yep, Eamon would like to come back, and then Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Frost.
Thank you. Eamon.
Yeah, Chairman, it's my understanding, and you can ask the speaker themselves, but my understanding in respect to this 4-year farming thing, they've actually came to Helidon as a result of being effectively moved out as a result of HS2. So they've acquired this land. They've been farming a lot longer than sort of 4 years. In terms of the siting of the building in this field has been established. What you're talking about is the lower part of the field, slightly lower compared to slightly higher part of the field. So in that sense, all talk of whether it's animal welfare or not, the council has accepted that a building in this field is reasonably necessary for the purposes of this unit. What you're deciding is whether or not the building has a significant impact where it's now proposed as compared to where it was previously approved, which is not that far apart. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. Am I allowed at this stage to ask questions?
Yes. If you've got questions of the planning officer, though, put them all together so he can answer them in one go.
Very often to a question or maybe a follow-up. I was just very surprised that your observation that this wasn't a question and answer session. If it's not, I'm not terribly sure what we're actually doing here.
Well, to come back to you on that one, of course you can ask questions to get answers, but with respect to Councillor Frost, he does tend to spend the whole of his time talking, answering questions. It seems very common that he does that. So I'll just remind him, I'm not having a go at him. So that was my reasoning, but I don't want to stop people asking questions, no problem at all, but not just repeatedly ask questions backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Back to you, Councillor Ritchie.
If I can continue. I am rather surprised if those comments are what you regard as respect for Councillor Frost.
I do have respect for him.
My issue with this is that this building, as has been pointed out by some other councillors, is on one of the highest bits of land in the district. It is going to be visible for a long, long way. And I just cannot imagine why we are agreeing to, to having the building on this particular site. Of course, we're all in favour of farming and everything else, but we are also in favour of the, of preserving the countryside, its views. These are the things that we, that we want to actually retain for the future. There is nothing, within the conditions on page 104, there is reference to the need for the construction of external surfaces needing to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. That doesn't leave me with any sense at all of what this building is going to look like. And that has been mentioned in the past. We have got some fairly hideous barns across some beautiful countryside. I just feel that is hopelessly inadequate. I just feel that this needs to be rethought. And I would, in terms of a precise question, I would like to ask, what discussions have officers had with the applicant about alternative locations where this barn could have been put, so that the visual impact was not going to be nearly as significant as it is likely to be?
Inman, would you like to answer that?
Thanks, Chairman. The honest answer is there was quite extensive discussions under the prior approval process as to the siting of the building, which resulted in the site that we discussed. Again, if I may just share the screen with the Chairman. Just to come back to Councillor Ritchie's point in terms of the building, the drawing before you is the building. So you, with the greatest respect, members do know what the building will look like. The issue is the impact of that building on the immediate and wider landscape. And what we're saying is that there's sufficient mitigation can be secured by way of planting, as advised by the landscape officer. Again, you're never going to hide buildings in the countryside. It's a feature of the countryside that farm buildings exist. It's over time how you mitigate that impact. Unless, of course, members judge the proposal to have a significant adverse impact. Again, I'm just coming back to the discussions that took place during the prior notification process. Yes, the building came in roughly in that location, was eventually approved in that location. The applicants had explored locating a building in and around the farm itself, but that is part of a conservation area and much closer to existing residential properties who enjoy the character and appearance of the conservation area. So the topography of the land also was a factor against siting it elsewhere in and around the village. This position was taken on the basis that internally you could access back to the farm going through fields without the need to use the public road. So what members are judging here is not whether or not there needs to be a building on this site. It's the choice between the building is approved in this location compared with the building now proposed here, and whether or not that change, because this building, even in the approved position, would still be visible. It will still have an impact. That impact will be mitigated by the existing woodland there and topography that's around the site. It's undulating topography. The land rises to the north, as set out in the report. So as you approach from Catesby, not all of the building is visible. Roadside trees and hedges mitigate its view on that approach. Similarly, as you leave the village, roadside trees and hedges and clumps of trees within the village and around the village prevent views until you get to about this point where it's quite exposed. And so you will see it. You will see it from there. But again, the views are broken up by tree side hedges. Planting along here in terms of allowing the hedgerow to grow up, clumps of copse of trees in this location, which is what the applicants are suggesting, and possibly in this location, would further mitigate those more exposed parts of the site. We're not going to hide the building. We're going to try and just break up views of it. The intention is not to hide the building. It's to mitigate it and help integrate it into the surrounding landscape. I've nothing further to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments, Councillor Ritchie? I gather that's a no then.
Sorry, I thank you for the response from the planning officer. I'm not totally convinced, however. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frost.
Clarification from Eamon, if I may, that there are plenty of farm buildings there already. I just checked myself again on Google Earth. The point was made earlier that they had nothing else, but just wanted to hear it from you that there are plenty of other buildings there already. Hello?
Sorry, Chairman.
Yeah.
I didn't quite catch that point.
No, you actually. Can you go again, Councillor Frost?
Sure, yeah. Chairman, thank you. Yes, I'm just trying to say that the point was made earlier that this building has to be granted permission because there's nothing else there. I just recap my memory by looking on Google Earth, and I would just like to hear it from Eamon, if I may, that there are in fact plenty of buildings there already.
Yeah, there are other buildings in and around the farm complex. This is an additional building. The facts remain is that we have approved a building and accepted that a building in this field is reasonably necessary for the purposes of this agricultural unit. What your choice, facing you members, is whether or not you're content with the new position of that building on slightly higher land compared with the lower site that was approved under the prior approval.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just trying to make the point that the reason given earlier was not a valid one, because there are buildings there already. There might not be where this farm is located, but it's not fair to say that there's no other buildings they can use. Thank you.
I understand your point. Any more speakers? Tony. I can't hear you, Tony.
Sorry, Chairman, I muted myself.
No, that's right.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Parker and Councillor Matton.
Right, in that order. Councillor Smith then.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, just a question to Eamon, reference the original, the prior permission that was given. Clearly, the issue here is the provenance of this new position, or the building upon it. So what is the height difference from where we gave the original permission to that we are now looking?
Eamon, can you answer that easily without reference?
The honest answer, Chairman, is I don't know in meters. I mean, I would say the distance between here and the drop there is a matter of meters, probably 3 to 4 meters, maybe even more. It's no, the land falls in this direction, it falls in this direction, it falls in that direction, it rises in that direction. So it's quite a steep fall back there. Putting it down here, as the applicants have indicated, would require a lot more cut and fill to create it into the hillside. It would also, as part of that approval, require an access running across the field in this direction. And again, to create that access, rightly or wrongly, it may be a benefit to simply keep the access in this location as opposed to cutting across the field. But I can't give you an absolute figure other than it's a matter of meters lower. It's certainly not 8 meters lower. The building's 8 meters high, so it certainly wouldn't be 8 meters lower. So that all you would see breaking this skyline point, the building would probably still break it in that sense. It's simply lower down than there.
Okay, so it's fair to say that the impact would be, the significance would be reduced by what level we don't know. Okay, so we've established that. Thank you. So just moving on then, has any consideration been given to solar panels and things, and whether this building is suitable for solar panels? Clearly, we're in a climate emergency, and this is something that obviously, if we can influence any such development in the open countryside, has that been considered? Is that something we should, or well, I believe we should be looking at it. Have we made that? Has that been considered? Is the question firstly.
To be frank, Chairman, no. My concerns was trying to establish whether or not members were happy with the siting of the building in the first place.
I don't think
having said that, certain permitted development rights exist that allow for agricultural buildings to benefit from solar panels, etc. I think under the prior approval process, or indeed permitted development rights. Again, if members feel that that's something that they wish to consider, etc., that's entirely open to you to make that judgment. I think at this stage, it's a case of deciding whether or not you're content with the siting of the building. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you.
So based on that, I mean, if this were to go through, I would like that to be conditioned. I'm clearly not content at the moment. And further on from that is we've spoken about landscaping, etc., etc. Is there a way in which, if this were to go through, that we can condition that there's more mature trees, etc., put in there? You know, the sooner this is less prominent. I hear what you're saying, Eamon, about it. It's going to be prominent. Of course it is. It's a big building. Again, if anything could be done with relation to that, should this go through. But certainly I'm not content with its position. Thank you.
Again, through you, Chairman. Yes, we imposed that condition at the time of writing the report. It's fair to say that in the interim period, the applicants have submitted, in response to the landscape officer's concerns, a landscape plan. That is not before members tonight, but it does propose a copse of trees in this location, with sort of semi-mature trees along this location. In addition to that, I think the landscape officer, in my view, would be that this could do with sort of bolstering because it's quite an exposed corner. But that's a matter of ongoing discussions, which is why we've imposed a condition. Again, members are entitled, if they feel that the size and species needs to be specified as heavy standards, medium standards, etc., then we can take that on board if members are minded to grant permission.
Okay, well, just so that members are aware, when we do vote on it, if it does gain permission, we will then vote on the conditions afterwards, okay, that it should have, so that you're not voting for anything beforehand, you're voting for the conditions afterwards, or you've got the chance to. Right, Councillor Parker next, I think it is. No, not Councillor Parker. Was it Parker? Yes, it is Parker.
Thank you, Chair. It seems that we all start off with credentials about farming at the moment. So just to join the club, I live at the back of a farm for 35 years, and farmers taught me how to drive, probably badly, but it was on tractors. So I know a little bit about farming as well, being involved with it. I think the thing here is that when I looked at the first application, it refers to storage of hay, straw and machinery, which I sort of understand. The second one is now livestock are involved, and this building is some way away from where the farm housing is. If we put all those things to one side, and I've got concerns that the agent didn't actually advise the farmer about the land and things like that, suitability, before they went ahead with the first application, let alone the second one. I believe that it goes against, and I'm sure Eamon will say yes or no to me, goes against RA 6.8, which is purely a policy, taking everything else away, the emotion, shall we say, which states development for agricultural, equestrian, forestry, leisure community, or tourism that is justified and of an appropriate scale for its location and has no significant adverse impacts on its character, beauty and tranquility. I think, as we've heard, this is on a very high point, and I'm not sure the conditions which have been put in place would actually help that. So I would see it would have an adverse impact. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Matten.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Gosh, we've been talking about this one for a long time. And I've been listening intently. And at first I had visions of this 8-metre huge great barn right on the top of a hill that could be seen, breaks the skyline from every angle, and was thinking, well, that's not acceptable. But it turns out that in fact, this is a barn in a field where we've already given approval to having a barn, and we're talking about moving it, yes, further up the hill, but we're talking about less than 8 meters increase in height. and therefore, given that we've already given approval to have this barn in this field and that we're just moving it a bit, which is going to increase its height by a few meters, to use the words of our planning officer, I think that we should go with the planning officer's advice and entrust our planning officers to ensure that as much as possible it's broken down by the planting of mature trees and the like. And I don't know if we've got a proposal already, because we've been talking about this for so long.
Yes, we have.
We have got a proposal.
Yeah.
Could you remind us, please, Chair, of what that proposal
The
is?
proposal at the moment is to approve the application, which has been seconded, and then we're voting afterwards on any additional oh God, what's the word?
Okay, thank you, and I will be supporting that proposal.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Tony, there's no more speakers, is there?
Councillor Ritchie, Chairman.
All right, after Councillor Ritchie, then I'm going to go to the vote, okay? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Chair. It's just about the way in which we go to the vote. I'm sorry, I've been rather slow searching through files here for a copy of our Constitution, but I would be grateful if the officers could confirm that the Constitution requires that amendments to a proposal are considered before the substantial proposal, amended or otherwise.
Tony, would you like to comment on that?
Yes.
Well, the solicitor has got his hand up, so whatever.
Tony, I'm happy for you to speak first if you like in relation to the Constitution, but I have just sort of messaged Tony to say I'd like to come in on it, but I'm happy for Tony to proceed first.
Well, if you'd like to go first, Jamie, please.
Yeah, that's fine. I would agree that, as I say, I was just liaising with Tony on that point. I would suggest that it would be more standard to say that if you wished for other conditions or amendments to the conditions to be part of the approval, they have to be chaired prior to the vote being taken. You'll appreciate that at the moment there are conditions relating to the materials and there are conditions relating to the landscape scheme to be submitted, etc. If members were minded to want to approve to a variation to what the officers recommended, then that should be tabled first.
Thank you, and thanks for your advice. In that case, do we need the proposer of the of this application or a separate proposer to for the
Chairman, I suggest you go back to the proposer to ask if he's willing to take any amendments to his proposal.
Yeah, okay. Right, who was the original proposer again there?
It was Councillor Chandler.
Councillor Chandler, are you willing to accept the screening proposals? Well, there was a couple of proposals.
I haven't heard enough detail, Chairman. We have to be reasonable.
Right.
Chairman, planning officer wants to come back in. Perhaps he can help.
Eamon. Can't hear you, Eamon.
You're still on mute.
Again, just as part of the discussions, Chairman, and for clarification, I know some members are getting hung up on this issue of livestock. The building is still going to be a general purpose agricultural building, so you're going to get farm machinery being stored in there, hay stuff, etc., and it will be used seasonally for livestock. Livestock are not going to be in there on a permanent basis. And the design and access statement that accompanied the application said it's a typical modern agricultural building, functional and utilitarian, will be used for storage of feedstock for the livestock, farm vehicles, and will be used for lambing in the lambing season. So just to be clear on that point. As regards to the discussion in terms of the conditions, we have condition 4, which is the landscape condition that members consider should be beefed up in terms of identifying more heavy standard species of trees, etc., and sizes of trees to ensure a more immediate impact. You also, if members have looked at their late representations, there is an additional condition on the surfacing of the access track. The reason for that is that the original access was granted permission as a field access. Clearly this building, so it was constructed as a fairly loose, rough track, as you've seen on the photographs. The purpose of that condition would be to ensure that the access is covered with a bound surface for at least 15 meters to avoid any loose material being dragged onto the adopted highway. So that is a condition before you under the late representations. And then you have the condition, I think, that Councillor Smith has suggested, which is to require solar panels to serve the building. I'm assuming those are to be constructed on the roof or on the field, or that I'm not too clear about. Clearly, if they're on the roof, then that raises the, that's a surface that's at the highest part of the site. So members have a think about that. Or do you simply just rely on the ability of the farmer to use their permitted development rights and exercise their permitted development rights if they so choose? So that's one for members to decide whether or not they wish to insist on that as a condition. And again, as with all conditions, yes, we can impose them. Members are entitled to impose them as long as they're satisfied they're reasonable and necessary to make the application acceptable in planning terms, but also bearing in mind that the applicants do have a right to appeal or to seek to vary or remove those conditions if they choose to do so at some future point. But again, that's my understanding of the debate so far, Chairman.
Thank you. What wording, Chairman? Sorry, Chair. Of what wording, Eamon, would be appropriate to get rid of the words beefed up? What particular wording? Use semi-mature trees or whatever?
Again, through you, Chairman, I'm not an arboriculturalist, so I have to defer to the landscape officer. Suffice it to say that we would take away from this the use of heavy standards, medium heavy standards, to ensure, in terms of the trees, to ensure that there's a again there's a kind of, if you get really big trees, there's a lot of maintenance and management of that, and they may fail. The purpose of the condition was to ensure the landscaping scheme, however it's agreed, is maintained for a period of 10 years at the very least. So we can come up with a form of wording and a form of specification, shall we say, that reflects what members have asked for. But as I say, I would defer to the landscape officer in that regard. But I'm happy to, if you give me permission, Chairman, to have that discussion, having heard the debate this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Chanter, you were the proposer of the original. Does that help you at all?
Yes, it does, Chairman. I particularly value the final advice that planning officer gave, that the planning officer and the landscape officer in discussion would be able to tidy up the conditions, provided that was the wish of the membership. It's not up to me to decide that, Jim.
Okay. Back to you, Solicitor.
Sorry, just to try and clarify the position. So, Councillor Chandler, the proposal from you, as I understand it, is that it's as per the officer's recommendation, or can I suggest this would assist in your proposal, if I understand it correct, that you're proposing to grant, subject to the conditions in the report, together with the update page, but delegate the authority to the planning officer with the landscape officer to convey that they would like slightly or greater size shrubs as reasonably possible in that condition on the landscape scheme. Is that correct as to what you're wishing to propose?
Through you, Chairman, yes, that matches it exactly. Thank you.
Fine. Can we just clarify whether or not you as the proposer wish to raise any point on solar panels in conditions?
Again, over to you.
Personally, I don't think that's fair that you should actually require them. I mean, it's always open to any holder of any building to seek to mitigate the climate emergency as and when they can. I don't think it would be reasonable or fair to require that.
Councillor, I'm with you on that. Oh, you've muted yourself, but I'm with you on that on the basis that's not forming part of your proposal.
Okay.
That's fine. And is there anything else you wish to add as the proposer in terms of conditions to your proposal?
None. Thank you.
Thank you. And then,
right.
Sorry,
Who
Tony. Sorry, Chet. Yeah, I was just going to say, if the seconder can confirm that they're
Yeah, I was just about
agreement,
to say that. Yeah.
then that table. So sorry.
Who's the seconder?
Councillor James, Chairman.
Councillor James, are you happy to agree with the proposer's suggestions?
Yes, as far as the landscape is concerned, and provided there's no mention of solar panels.
Yes. Okay. So we're dead clear what you're voting for then.
Yes.
And when you do the roll call, Marina, I wish to vote this time. All right.
Chairman,
Yes.
I think before you go to the vote, Councillor Smith wishes to speak, and potentially there's still an amendment to consider in respect of solar panels, which was Councillor Smith's suggestion. But he is wishing to speak.
Right, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, everybody. I know it's getting late. I didn't make myself clear enough. With regard to the solar panels, my thinking is that at least the building is of such construction that it could potentially take solar panels. So then at least with them, there's one less excuse not to do it potentially. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. We are in a climate emergency, and to assist in the thinking of anybody who's doing any development, so it can be future-proofed, I don't think would be unfair or unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I come on that?
Sorry, Chairman. Just before anybody else comes in, can we just clarify from Councillor Smith that he's not looking to amend the proposal then in respect to solar panels? The applicant is still on the call, so I'm sure they're hearing what has been said about solar panels, but you're not seeking an amendment?
Well, what I'm looking for is that the construction of the building is such that it could take solar panels. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know whether some agricultural buildings can take them and some can't. It's just that if we are able to ensure that it's potentially can take it, then good enough for me.
But you're not proposing an amendment that it should happen.
Well, no, I'm proposing that the building should be of sufficient, the construction is such that it could take solar panels.
Yeah, but that isn't going to either be an amendment or an addition to what we're talking about, is it? We're not going to be voting on that. You've either got to be positive or not, surely.
Yeah, Chairman, I think Councillor Smith will have to either make a proposal to amend or not. And if he does make that proposal, then he would need a seconder, and we would need to take a vote on that.
I'll make that as a proposal then.
Okay, do you have a seconder? I can't see one. Oh, yes, I see a hand. I see a hand now. Councillor Ritchie. Right.
Thank you. I would simply like to second what Councillor Smith has proposed.
Okay, thank you. Right. Well, I think we've had enough discussion on the subject. Oh, I've got a hand waving like mad. Is it really serious, Councillor Irving?
Well, it is, because I think the proposer is Councillor Chandler, the seconder is David James. And as far as I'm concerned, Councillor Chandler said he will not take any more amendment.
That's correct. But this
so,
is... But this is a separate amendment which we deal with first. We get rid of the amendment either one way or the other, and then we vote on the proposal. Because Councillor Chandler isn't willing to accept this as part of his
exactly.
proposal.
Well, I think Councillor Chandler said he will not accept anything. So
He did.
I think we are making a meal out of it.
Okay, Jamie.
The only point I would wish to make is obviously in relation to conditions, as the planning officer has pointed out in section 56, they have to be reasonable, etc. This plan has this barn has a plan with it. I'm not sure whether or not you can then condition that the building has to be built in accordance with the plan, when none of us are engineers to be able to say whether or not it's then has an ability to accept solar panels.
Thank you.
I think on that point, you have to clearly consider whether or not the building is acceptable or not acceptable. I'll say no more.
Okay. Tony?
Sorry, Jamie, we missed half of what you were saying there. So could you just run by that again, please?
Apologies. The key element when considering conditions, as the planning officer has said, is whether or not they're reasonable and necessary to make it acceptable. So the key element is that there is a design and a plan that is conditioned. If you are now saying that that plan may not be acceptable, then it brings up a wealth of possibilities that as to how you condition that. And secondly, primarily, are you saying it is necessary and reasonable to make sure the barn is constructed to hold solar panels? Because that is the key element when this is an agricultural barn.
Okay, thank you. Chairman, if I may, can I just seek advice from the planning officer as he has a view to the necessity of taking this forward?
Go ahead.
Again, like everybody else here, I'm not a structural engineer. Suffice it to say, these agricultural buildings are sturdy old things, and as a lay person, I think they're more than capable of accommodating solar panels. That said, that's not what's before us tonight. So there is an argument to say that by imposing this condition, you're asking for something more than forms part of the current application. When farmers and other building owners can exercise permitted development rights to install solar panels, etc. That's the reasons why the General Permitted Development Order introduced permitted development rights to allow owners of buildings to exercise those rights to deal with climate change by installing renewable energy features in and around and on buildings. So everyone's on board, as it were. What you have to decide, members, is this absolutely necessary to approve this building tonight? No. But is it a sound, robust building that we're approving that could accommodate solar panels? In my view, yes, it is. Thanks, Chairman.
Chairman, if I may, I think we need to go back to Councillor Smith now and just ask him
in his mind,
in light of what you've heard about the reasonableness or otherwise of imposing such a condition, are you still wishing to seek that amendment?
I think by looking to seek that amendment, I think we've now had sufficient debate to make it clear as to what we would like to see. And I would hope that solar panels are considered. So I will withdraw that now.
I'll tell you what we could do, Councillor Smith. The applicant is listening anyway. We could have a note from the planning committee that the planning committee could ask the applicant, and I'm sure this would, to consider the use of solar panels if possible.
Yeah, I think ideally, yes, that's absolutely yes. That's precisely.
There would be nothing wrong with this committee to say that. It wouldn't be a condition, but it'll be a note from this committee.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so that is withdrawn. So we go back to the original proposal of Councillor Chandler's that the application be approved with the amendments that were made at the time. I can't repeat them word for word now, which has been seconded. All those in favour, again, you will do a roll call and I will vote as well.
Councillor Chandler,
For.
Councillor Cribbin,
For.
Councillor Dabbs,
Against.
Councillor Frost,
Against.
Councillor Harris,
Against.
Councillor Irving Swift,
Against.
Councillor James, Councillor Matton,
For.
Councillor Parker,
Against.
Councillor Ritchie,
Against.
Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Wesley,
Against.
Councillor Osborne,
For.
Five, 8, yeah.
5 in favour, 8 against.
The application is refused then. Now,
Do we need to?
Do the reverse.
Chairman, we need.
Yeah. Now. Yeah. Okay. So now we need a proposal for it to be refused and the given reasons. So one of you 8 that voted for it to be refused, please make a proposal and give reasons.
Councillor Parker had a good listing there. Sorry, Councillor Parker.
No, I'm happy. My proposal to go against it is against RA 6.8.
Is that the only one, Councillor Parker?
That's the one which is the stronger one, Chair.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that, Eamon, or not?
As soon as I unmute myself, Chairman. So yeah, as I understand it, that part of the policy allows for agricultural development, provided it's justified of appropriate scale for its location and has no significant adverse impacts on its character, beauty and tranquility. So from what Councillor Parker is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that the proposal is not justified or would have significant adverse impacts on the character of the landscape.
I think you're saying both, Aim. I think it's not justified because of the landscape impact.
Well, as I say, when we talk about justification, clearly this is an agricultural building, which we have accepted is necessary for this agricultural holding in this particular field. So I think in terms of justification, it might be a bit nuanced. It's not justified in that particular site higher up the field. Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
Because higher up the field would have a significant adverse impact on the landscape. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right, Eamon.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
Okay. You have a second, Councillor Parker. There's a hand straight above you, Councillor Wesley. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Yeah, Chairman, you've got Councillor Frost has indicated he wishes to speak.
Okay, Councillor Frost.
Chairman, I've no need to, certainly no desire to at this time of night. If Eamon feels that that's enough, certainly I'll leave it at that. Is it enough?
Through you, Chairman, it's not for me to decide the reasons for refusal. You know my thoughts on it, hence the recommendation. I think it's you members who have to decide what is the impact. Councillor Parker is making a proposition that it has a significant adverse impact on the landscape that conflicts with that policy. And what you're saying is that any benefits of the proposal are outweighed by that harm. That's what you're saying to me. And that's the vote of committee. That'll be the reason for refusal. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
None indicated, Chairman.
Right. We have a proposal then that the reasons for the application be refused for the given reason. All those in favour, again, roll call.
Councillor Chandler,
Against.
Councillor Cribbin,
Can I just say, do we have a seconder for that? Sorry, Chairman.
Yes, we did have a
Yeah.
second. Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Wesley.
Sorry, that's fine. No problem. Yeah. So I'm against.
Councillor Dabbs,
For.
Councillor Frost,
For.
Councillor Harris,
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift,
For.
Councillor James,
Against.
Councillor Matton,
Against.
Councillor Parker,
For.
Councillor Ritchie,
For.
Councillor Smith,
For.
Councillor Wesley,
For.
Councillor Osborne.
Against.
This time 8 in favour and 5 against.
Right, the application is refused for the given reasons. The given reason, rather. Okay. Well, that in fact concludes it. Didn't expect that one to be the longest one. I've got Councillor Irving Swift waving goodbye. And can I say thank you very much for all attending, taking part.